Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the youth, first of all, let me thank the youth and the children for the wonderful performance. I've learned a few dance lessons from them. I'll take that back with me to New York. And as it has been said, without you, the conference would not be so colorful and full of energy, right? I've never been to a conference in my recent years in New York that has so much energy, actually. I also want to thank the National Association for Child and Youth Care Workers and UNICEF South Africa for inviting me, and to thank the Department of Social Development for hosting this important conference with NACCW. I would like to thank the organizers for bringing so many important child protection practitioners from around the world together for these 3 days. It is a great honor and privilege for UNICEF and for me personally to participate in the 18th Conference on Child Youth Care in South Africa as a child protection practitioner who's been doing this job. I would also like to thank the Irish ambassador for his recognition of UNICEF, right, and for the work that we have been doing. My congratulations to the Department of Social Development, the National Council of Social Service Professionals, and NGOs for all the years of hard work undertaken in successfully developing a social welfare workforce, which includes a child and youth care workforce that has been fully trained, accredited, and regulated, right? We don't see a lot of that in Africa. Fully trained, accredited, and regulated. And also for the implementation of Isibindi, right? You know that I'm an ambassador of Isibindi. I go all over the world and talk about Isibindi and your youth care model, which we all know and appreciate and have learned from. You can Google it, it's there. And to the child and youth care workers and other social service professionals, thank you for your tireless effort for the realization of the rights of the child, as well as ensuring that children are cared for and protected throughout South Africa. I have to salute you for being there in the front line. UNICEF is the world's leading advocate for children, guided by the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We work with partners to ensure that children are given the best chance for survival, development, and protection globally. Indeed, the Convention on the Rights of the Child has hit its 30th anniversary, and we celebrate it this year. This was the first international treaty signed by the newly democratic government of South Africa, thus indicating the country's strong commitment to children, which was enshrined in its remarkable progressive constitution. If you're not aware of it, all child rights advocates know about your constitution, and it's debated, and it's seen as a model. Congratulations. And if Madam Minister may allow me this morning, there was a dialogue about some of the legislation and how it's been implemented. So it shows that it's not one of those countries where you have a constitution and you put it on the shelf. It's a living constitution with the government's commitment to implement it. Ladies and gentlemen, children today, both in South Africa and globally, face many challenges and obstacles on their journey to adulthood. The foundations we lay today will have a lasting and meaningful impact on the generation of tomorrow. Let me dwell on the importance of social service workforce. Social service workers, government and non-governmental professionals and paraprofessionals working across sectors are often the first line of response for children and families. They're the most important element of every well-functioning child protection system. And ladies and gentlemen, I've seen it all over the world. I've seen it in Africa, I've seen it in Asia, I've seen it in the Rwanda, in Bangladesh, I've seen it in Vietnam, I've seen it in Europe, in Greece, I've seen it in America, I've seen it down in the border, I've seen it in Colombia. That person that holds the hand of that child, that person that you are the only one who's there between that child and the spire for that child. So all over the world, I've seen it, right? And I feel that these frontline workers, their ability to perform and the impact of their works requires proper political support, as it's demonstrated by the presence of the ministry, human and financial support as well. We know they are under-resourced, and we know they are under-supported. It's been estimated that 65% of the 169 targets related to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals will not be reached without engaging and coordinating with local and regional authorities responsible for social services. Investing in the social service workforce will yield high returns for children and family. We need to say that to the Ministry of Finance, right? They need to know that you would give them a return on their investment, that you are not just asking that they provide these resources just because we have to support children. They will have a return on their investment. On the other hand, the lack of investment in the social service workforce will undermine all other efforts to strengthen the child protection system in a sustainable manner. In UNICEF's report, Generation 2030, we have estimated at the end of the century, half of the world's children would be African. In Africa, 70% of the refugees are children. It is therefore important that we develop a workforce that focuses on children, trained specifically to care for troubled children and children in difficult circumstances. The child and youth care worker are well placed to meet this need. In addition, Africa has a youth bulge. Of course, actually, I've been totally energized and entertained by the youth today, right? But we do have a youth bulge. A crisis with youth unemployment, inadequate training, and youth development. We have a youth crisis, the transition of youth to the workforce. We have a youth crisis, and it has been recognized. And we know that if we don't address the youth crisis, it's a political landmine waiting to explode in our face. But this crisis is an opportunity for us all and for partners to support the training and development of unemployed youth into child and youth care workers and other social service professionals to respond to child protection needs, while systematically responding to Africa's political and economic priority, which is the youth development, safety, and employment. But let me share a few thoughts on why we have prioritized the social service workforce. UNICEF Global Experiences demonstrate that a strong social service workforce across sectors plays a central role in identifying, preventing, managing risk, and responding to situations of vulnerability and harm. It also plays a central role in alleviating poverty, facilitating access to and delivery of social service, promoting social justice, reducing discrimination, challenging harmful behaviors, and social norms. Recognizing the fundamental role that this social service workforce plays in the lives of children and family, we in UNICEF, in a strategic plan for the period 2018 and 2021, for the first time identify social service workforce strengthening as a strategic priority to protect all children from violence, exploitation, and to achieve the SDG goals and targets to end all violence against children. We believe, actually, that if we have a workforce that teaches children and is responsible for education, a workforce that is responsible for health, we believe that we should also have another workforce that should be a concern and should receive the support, the workforce that deals with children who are harmed, or children who are in distress, or children who are at risk. To support these efforts, UNICEF has recently released the guidelines to strengthen social service workforce for children, and these guidelines are informed by evidence of what works and lessons learned in the field. They aim to accelerate and support regional and national efforts to plan, develop, and support the social workforce, including guidance on how to provide promotive, preventive, and responsive service to vulnerable children and families. And guess what? The guidelines have incorporated good examples from South Africa, including the Isibindi model. For UNICEF will increase the investment in this sector, and it's already showing results. 132 countries across all regions of the world have invested in workforce strengthening. Countries reported progress on strengthening the legal framework. As I told you, right, we follow the debates, and the implementation of the legal framework in South Africa. It is a living document. You are an example to a lot of countries of how you can implement a legal framework. Countries reported progress on strengthening the legal framework for the social workforce. Today, I was listening as Dr. Maria spoke about getting everybody accredited, right? Getting everybody accredited. The 3,000, where are you? Make sure you're accredited. Creating supervision, supporting mechanisms, strengthening the capacity and the education of the workforce. You have to have a trained workforce. Generating evidence and data is also a key to better understanding the social service workforce, its role in child protection work. Since 2017, UNICEF, along with its partners, such as the Global Social Service Workforce Alliance, has engaged in conducting extensive mapping of the social workforce in more than 35 countries across the world. We now have a complete understanding, and we are currently undertaking more mappings which will provide strategic directions, recommendations to strengthen social workforce at the national level. This Global Social Service Workforce Alliance recently released a comprehensive social service workforce mapping toolkit, which was developed based on the experience of the regional-led mapping of the workforce. The toolkit is intended to guide a participatory national-level analysis of the workforce. But let me share a few challenges that we need to further work on. Despite the progress in strengthening the social workforce, a number of challenges remains to be addressed. Some of these challenges around a common understanding of who the social service worker are, the functions, and their performance. Countries have different views of who could be recognized as part of the workforce, regardless of the path countries choose for strengthening the social workforce. Identifying who is part of the social service workforce, reaching consensus at national level is critical to define the scope and the range of workforce strengthening strategies needed to plan, develop, and support the workforce at the country level. Country task force, national leadership group, or other representative stakeholder groups can facilitate the development of this definition. Estimates of workforce size composition often rely on data of government workers alone, which may not be accurately reflecting the workers engaged at the community level or non-governmental entities. Where possible, we should invest in adapting and using the human resources information system of the government and non-governmental organizations to show who the social workers are. Education and training opportunities, I've spoken about that before, are varied, but it's limited. Field placement, this is one thing in South Africa you're good at. Short-term certificate program, especially for paraprofessional. Community-based workers are still limited, but capacity building options are there for the social workforce, including diverse educational training programs adapted to the specific tasks and function. On the other hand, actually, workers engage in complex case, you have to have a flexible training arrangement and short-term training and certification opportunities, as I said. But if it's complex cases that requires intensive psychosocial support, counseling, or best interest determination, we have to have long-term training for those. Although most reporters having a supervisor report that they have a supervisor, the quality of the supervision is less satisfactory. As a practitioner, I know how important the supervisors are. Your supervisor is also your mentor. Your supervisor is your role model. Your supervisor is your leader. Your supervisor is your champion. Your supervisor, I remember all my supervisors, right? The ones I didn't like, I moved on, okay? Right? Because it's a mission. Right? This work that you guys are doing is a mission. So the other thing actually which I was pleased to hear this morning was a professional association. Professional associations are widespread, but their capacity is often limited by lack of formal or legal recognition and a narrow view of who they represent. Who do you represent as a professional organization? Do you represent members or do you represent yourself? Has your professional organization been captured by a group, right? Who do you represent And the values of your professional association is the values that the workers bring. If you believe in a democratic social association, professional association, if you believe in a moral professional association, a professional association that has ethics, right? You have to have a professional association that mirrors your value as people who are dealing with the most vulnerable population in the world. Formal recognition by government of the professional association, I listened carefully to Dr. Mari as she was talking, and their roles, either through legislation or the formal means, is critical to legitimizing and enabling them to contribute to their workforce strengthening process. We encourage all countries across all regions to undertake the mapping which I spoke about to arrive at their own context-specific definition and vision for strengthening the workforce. In South Africa, the Council of Social Service Professionals has already done the mapping, defined the different social service professionals and their level of registration. We commend the South African Council in their ongoing effort to recognize diversity and development as to professionalize and regulate the different social service professionals and to respond in a dynamic way to the South African needs. We also call on countries to investment in workforce education, skill development. Working with vulnerable children and families, as I've said before, requires a broad range of competencies and skills, including core values such as respect for diversity, interpersonal communication, as well as more specific skills such as case management and counseling. And definitely, I'm sure these youths have interpersonal skills. They can't be so dynamic, okay, full of such energy. And you could see even then the non-verbal communication in their dance. So I'm sure they have the interpersonal skill. Well done for your training that you've impacted on them. Whilst training packages and curriculum for other countries can be adapted, countries need to ensure that their capacity building efforts are based on their national context and reality and meet the needs of social service workforces defined through their country mapping exercise. Colleagues, I've been to countries where they've parachuted the curriculum in, okay? And they've done a cut and paste, right? And now when I look at the curriculum, I could be in Birmingham, or I could be, in one of these Western countries. It doesn't work, okay? You have to contextualize it to your context. And when we were taking out, we saw that very clearly, that you are contextualizing your training and your workers are adapted to your context, okay? In concluding, UNICEF mandate is a mandate and commitment to protect all children from violence, and government's mandate and commitment to protect all children from violence and exploitation, and to strengthen their child protection system cannot be realized without a strong social workforce at the country level. The workforce is now recognized, and we have evidence of that. We've done an evaluation. It's recognized as the single most important element of any child protection system. No system can function effectively without that people, day in and day out, work with the most vulnerable families and make that system come to life. Establishing a qualified, motivated, well-resourced cadre of social workers to drive the system and help the most at-risk and vulnerable children and families to get the support they need is critical to promote and protecting the rights of all those children. We are aware here in South Africa that you've trained thousands of child and youth care workers who work in the life space. And this morning I was also exposed to a debate about the life space, and it's something that I take with me, right? Dr. Don, I take many things away with me, okay? I take the dance, I take the energy, and I take those with me, right? Hundreds and thousands of most marginalized children have received love, care, and support and enhanced access to social services, which stories I'm sure we'll hear along the course of this conference. I came here earlier and I was taken to another Isibindi project in, I've forgotten if it's 2012, 2014, or 2010. It was in another region, and I listened to these guys. I have a daughter. I have a daughter that has choices. I have a daughter that controls her sexuality. I have a daughter that knows about reproductive health care. And I was there listening to a group of girls that have just had kids. And one of them said to me, right? And one of them said to me, because of Isibindi, her child had cerebral palsy. She said, because of Isibindi, my child stood up and saw the sun before she died. Right? That's all she wanted. This girl, she was in her teens. That's all she wanted. Let me conclude. The challenges facing children in the world today are real. They're counting on us and on us. South Africa has moved ahead, developed many positive practices that we can learn from for all of us to make a difference. Let us protect all children from violence, abuse, and neglect and exploitation, as every child has the right to be safe and respected and valued. I wish everyone a wonderful conference, and I assure the continuation of our commitment and partnership from UNICEF to build up a holistic social welfare and child protection workforce with the government and with civil society in South Africa. You are a solid example. As it has been said, South Africa is leading the world, and Dr. Don, I'm not taking anybody with me, but I take the messages with me back to New York. Thank you very much.